I suppose the most important aspect so far has been the feedback that they've gotten from the mentors. It's fantastic to have that opportunity for somebody outside to comment on what they've done, and there was a range of feedback that they got, and it was fantastic for them to be able to read it, for them to be able to see where they could improve, that they're not always listening to the teacher, that we're giving the feedback, but to see it from somebody else. I thought that was fantastic.
It's been great for the students to get opinions and views and work with people outside of the class teacher. Someone who's been in industry in a creative arts or something for 10 or 12 years and has so many stories, and then a lot of the time as well the students will be linking with mentors who have similar interests that they do, because their projects will be matched up. Just a breath of fresh air for the students, and have different opinions coming in.
I think actually getting the feedback from somebody who's not nagging them every step of the way was fantastic, and the fact that they were in the industry, that it was a real life situation and they were getting feedback from the mentors, that was really good, and it really helped them develop the ideas.
I think it gave them a lot of confidence really, and especially because they're looking at these lessons and they're seeing that they're expert interviews and everything, so these are people who have made it in the field and everything, and for them to recognise them and say that this is a fantastic idea, you've done well, that meant a lot to them.
They got really good feedback, much richer feedback than we expected, so they were very pleased with that, and it gave them great direction where to go next.
And I definitely noticed a sort of ramp up in energy from the students after they got that feedback. They just started to take it a little bit more seriously, and they started to realise that their idea was worthwhile, and you saw them then kind of put their energy into it a little bit more.
When the feedback came, it was a pivot moment. They had to stop, take on board, rethink their projects, try and incorporate the suggestions they were getting, didn't go forward again, but possibly in a slightly different direction they had been going in originally.
I think for students just to be mentored and to be given that bit of guidance, it gives them a bit of confidence to speak then what they want to say, and to know that they won't be shot down in it, that every idea is a good idea, and to try and make it workable then within the parameters that they have.
No idea is too small, that even the simplest idea can expand and develop, and I think they really saw that when they got their feedback over Easter, that some of them thought their ideas maybe were basic or simple, but that the simplest little idea could change something huge in life, so to just go with it and trust your instinct.
It's really important for them that they, I suppose, are exposed to adults other than teachers, and that they got to be so lucky that they were, mentored by some of the leading lights in industry in their professions, and they actually gave them advice and showed them, how they can improve, and give them signposts to further their ideas. So what an amazing opportunity for them to be exposed to this.
That could revolutionise hurling forever. Our project name is
the Picky Uppy.
Our product is the sanitation station.
My team and I chose the project on mental health and well-being because we think it's a really important topic amongst young people.
As a group, we came up with the idea for the Picky Uppy because we believe that it is our job as a younger generation to come up with new and creative solutions.
The big idea gave us a chance to voice our opinion and help us find solutions to problems we hear every day.
We wanted to do our part and highlight how impactful racial microaggressions could be.
All of our creative minds come together and there are ideas coming in from everyone.
Our aim is to make a positive impact on elderly people's lives.
We think it's important that technology is inclusive and meets the needs of all.
And I'm happy to say I'm one of the Big Ideas mentors.
Great. Lorna, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. Oh, you're mute, Lorna, sorry.
Sorry, I thought I had on. Good morning, Lorna Ross. I'm Chief Innovation Officer with VHI Health and Wellbeing, and I have worked in design for about 30 plus years, primarily in the States, originally from Dublin and back, and supporting Kim and the team with the big idea, and a mentor last year, looking forward to being a mentor this year, and really excited about getting a chance to share the kind of importance, I guess, of this program, in terms of thinking about kind of Irish education and creativity.
Amazing. And Stephen, last but never least.
Hi everyone, how are you doing? My name is Stephen. I'm design director at Richards D. We're a design, brand and strategy agency here in Dublin.
And I've been working with Kim and the team, Big Ideas mentor last year, and just hoping to share experience and the kind of positive elements that we had in terms of that last year. And yeah, that's me.
Amazing. So to kick off, I'd like to start maybe with Ashwin. Why do you think creative skills are important, particularly facing into the next decade?
So I think creative skills are foundational to life skills, especially with how quick the industry is shaping and changing and the new jobs that are being invented. It's important to understand creative problem solving as a method to then be adaptable and shift into the new potential positions that are going to turn up in the future. Our education system has not caught up with the innovation of the industry. And so teaching creative skills will really help our students, the next generation, to be equipped for the future.
That's spot on, absolutely. And Lorna, from your perspective and your background, probably in the medical sector, could you add to that?
Yeah, so I think that it's a mindset. I mean, people talk about creative confidence, and there's design, and many of us have formally trained in design and would be considered kind of experts in that area. But there's a kind of general kind of value in creative confidence that kind of crosses all different sectors and disciplines. And it's really a mindset about how you approach problem solving, and it's also how you collaborate. So there's the kind of value of really thinking about how you make decisions. Like, I think there's right now, there's a lot of conversation about what's the kind of challenges that we're facing, and a lot of conversations about how we're really going to confront them. And I think for young people right now, there's a lot of anxiety around the narrative around how much things are broken, and there's not enough conversation about the kind of mindset that we're going to kind of all agree on how we kind of approach the solutions. It's just too much talk. It's very negative. I think it's really toxic for kids to hear that conversation and not hear a conversation about how are we going to fix things, not what we have to fix. And so I think creative problem solving and generative problem solving and expansive thinking, and I think collaboration are key to us, being optimistic about how we're going to confront some of these issues, Kim.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. And Stephen, from your perspective, and as a parent as well, I guess, why do you think creative skills are important in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think, similar to what Lorna's saying there, I think it's really that ability to be able to, think, divergent, laterally, all those kinds of things. And, I suppose while some of us as mentors are coming to the project and helping out from we are in the creative industries, we work in that, we see it every day. But I don't think those skills need to be or should be confined to just those who are, so-called professionals in it. And that they are skills. It's like, you don't teach maths to people, only to people who become mathematicians. I think, creative skills are skills for life. They're skills to be able to, work collaboratively in teams, to be able to even have conversations, I think, with people who are, to be not only a problem solver yourself, but also to be able to speak the language of problem solving and that kind of mode of thinking. So I think to be able to, equip young people with those kind of skills and to even give them the experience to be able to experiment with things, projects that may come out in the real world or may impact the real world. I just think they're really, really kind of unique, and I think they give them the tools to be able to actually, when they do come out into the working world or whatever it might be, that they have that experience behind them already.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it's one of those umbrella terms, creative skills, that really do capture some really essential skills that we all need and employers need and society needs. But through our program, we aim to connect industry professionals like yourselves to support student teams to develop their ideas. And you all mentored students in our first year. So from your perspective, what are the benefits with connecting industry with education? Ashwin, if I may go to you first.
Yeah, I think it's really important to connect industry with our students, because early on you start to learn what things really look like in the real world versus what is taught. Like for myself, when I finished college, there was a vast gap between what I learned and what had to be practiced and put into action. And so having this early interaction actually starts them to think outside of the parameters of education and how they can actually apply the skills that they're learning in the real world.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Lorna, from your experience.
Well, I would say the kind of the principle of, you can't be it till you see it. I mean, you don't, I know I grew up in Dublin and was educated in the kind of 70s. And I don't think I knew anyone who had a creative kind of, who was a creative professional. I don't think any of my parents did. And so you kind of default into it, you become the kind of anomaly, the black sheep, and you end up becoming a designer. And I think that the scale, we need an awful lot more designers. We need them to be more present. We need them to be more of them and to be more integrated. And so it can't be the kind of exotics anymore. There can't be this kind of tiny community of creatives. Economically, we need a lot more people to be aware of this. This kind of mindset. And so I think it's really important that it's considered, a really viable option for kids to pursue, and transition year is a great year. It may be too late, but it's really important that they are validated, that validation persists in their school. I mean, it's one thing to be exposed to it for TY, and then if all the messaging is that this thing, then it becomes, it disappears. And so there needs to be a validation and a pathway into those careers, because we need a lot more creatives. I think economically we need it.
Absolutely, and I think creativity absolutely is prerequisite to innovation for every sector. And I think the more students that have the foundations and principles of creative skills, the more potential there is for societal effect and positive industry effect as well. Mm-hmm. Stephen, if I may ask you as well on your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it was just it is that thing. It kind of goes two ways. I think I think the students get something out of it, but the creatives, the mentors get something out of it as well. I think for the students, I think definitely that kind of piece of that kind of expanded worldview of speaking to people who are doing this thing and kind of them to see the possibility in that, and even just to see like the breadth of and the range of mentors that have come in, and it's everyone from kind of product design to UX to illustration to various kind of digital pieces. It's fantastic to have that and them engaging with that. But I think as well as that, even the mentors, certainly, I mean, I did anyway, just speak from my own experience, great energy and just enthusiasm in terms of engaging with the students and just seeing the quality of the work that came through and the quality of the kind of the thinking and exploration and all those. So I mean, I certainly felt energized after engaging with that as well. So I think there's benefits on both sides as well.
Absolutely, and I think it's wonderful to see a couple of examples. We had a student who never considered himself to be creative, and now felt so confident in gaining these creative skills, leading the team as well, all the benefits of that kind of umbrella term, the collaboration, the connectedness, making new friends. It's so important to kind of give these students this opportunity. So yeah, absolutely agree with you there, Stephen. So talking slightly outside of education, what tips would you have for people who are trying to foster a culture of creativity within their own business, whether coming at it from a new or trying to enhance what they're already doing? And Lorna, I might start with you first, if you don't mind dropping it.
This is a tough question because it really, I mean, it's I think there's people. It's hard to hire creatives, and I've run a lot of design teams, and I know that the kind of building of a design capability is hard, and I think that often even getting the resources, it's always competing for something else. And so culturally, there has to be. I mean, I think creativity has to come in. It has to be top down. I mean, you have to see evidence of it in leadership first. Like it's I think it's really, really hard when creatives get hired in, and they get kind of hired in potentially at a junior level, or maybe they're in the kind of marketing department, or maybe they're in the kind of UX department, and there's just not a culture. So there's a kind of a slightly creative, not silo, but there's a kind of small group of creatives, and that the rest of the culture is kind of business as usual, which is maybe thinking in a more kind of linear way. And it's very, very hard to kind of affect that culture. So I think you probably need, if you want to have the culture really creative, you need to evident it. Yeah, it has to be evident at a leadership level first. And I think, you know, sometimes people would kind of they're kind of tiptoe into creativity or design by bringing in more junior people. And it's very, very hard for junior designers unless they have a mentor in that organization or someone who's really kind of clearing the way and kind of advocating for design for them to even be effective. And so their success is really limited. So I think, and it is really important to bring it in at a more senior level and to kind of understand the scope and be really clear about what you want design or creativity to do. I mean, what kind of value you want to drive in your organization. You need to link it to, like, you know, a really core KPI. You need to kind of link, and I think you're right, Kim, innovation. I mean, everyone wants innovation. And innovation is another word for creativity. I mean, we just, you know, it's a different way of saying it. Maybe it's a more corporate way of saying creativity, because creativity sounds like crayons in kindergarten. So we say innovation because it sounds, you know, I don't know, it's more corporately tolerated or something. But it is. So I think if it comes in under the guise of innovation, which certainly my career has been in innovation, it's really about creativity. But I think it needs to be a commitment at a senior level first. And that would be my one kind of, I guess, insight is that if you don't do that, then any other hires you have may find it really hard to be effective in your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Fully agree. And I think there's a challenge there of that clash between top down and bottom up. And again, that pathway in the middle. Ashwin, I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I suppose creating a culture of creativity is important. It's important to distinguish the difference between creatives and creativity itself. I think we're all inherently born creative, but often we forget that fact. And it's important that we teach our staff, the people we work with, that they are first made creative. And then second, creativity is like working a muscle. So you have to create the space to do that. And so creating spaces, inviting people to work with them to build that muscle is an important part of fostering that culture.
I love that. It's a muscle, that idea, and it's a really powerful muscle. And I think there's incredible examples in industry when companies really do flex that, and it's better culture, it's better products, it's better services, and really joined up thinking. Yeah, that's a great example, Ashwin. Stephen.
Yeah, no, I think that idea of spaces is so key as well. But I think, you know, that can be physical spaces as well as mental spaces. And I think, you know, part of that as well is just that kind of openness, you know, that ability to be able to be, you know, open-minded. You know, we would run, you know, creative workshops and things like that with clients quite frequently. And it is really about kind of, you know, coming into a space where they feel that they can actually be kind of open in the feedback, open in the discussion, and actually, you know, have that ability to just not critically analyze things the minute they come into the room, to actually allow things to actually live and breathe and all those kind of things. And I think the traditional thinking is kind of like, you know, cut to the chase, get to the point, all that kind of stuff, and actually just allowing that kind of freedom for ideas to grow and breathe. And I think that's part of that thing around the culture. It's about that thing of having, you know, either a physical space or a mental space to actually do those kind of things. And I think if all those kind of things are kind of fostered, I think that starts then to come into, you know, can start to build the culture and all those things as well. So there's a lot of that kind of piece needs to be worked on and actually built over time.
Absolutely. And that reminds me of a phrase somebody said to me, or a term, it was, or a rule, that there are no bad ideas in a brainstorm, and everybody can have a brainstorm with their team. And then we also try to eliminate the word no but, or the words no but.
Yeah, it's yes but, it's yes and, it's yes and. It's
exactly.
Build on it. How do you make it and turn it rather than stop it in its tracks?
Exactly, because and at every level. And I think then it's really important for people at a senior level to let other people have a voice in that room and in that space. So I think it's a challenge there for senior leaders to actually maybe be quiet, and then younger team members to maybe be more vocal, because that's the incredible part of innovation and being more inclusive, is to kind of open up those opportunities, and that's when some really exciting things can happen. Thanks, Stephen. So
can I just add something?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it just came to me that part of that is actually creating the space and the availability to make mistakes, because you cannot have creativity without the ability to explore, and exploration means there will be some failures throughout that process, but those failures help you grow and actually evolve the idea into something even better. And so if you don't have that space to actually fail, you won't be able to push the creative envelope.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important to understand the positivity around failure rather than the negative connotations. So what we try and do in the Big Idea is really celebrate failure, and we call it learning. So it's failure through learning. And that sounds super cheesy, but it's an absolute essential piece. And you want to fail fast, move on. It's okay. It does not stop progress. Fantastic. So on to our next question, because I think we could almost have another discussion just about failure. But we all know that education is a big ship and doing many things for many people. And we do teach in silos or subjects with an emphasis on rote learning. Do you think this kills creativity? Stephen, I might start with you.
That idea of rote learning, it can do, yeah. I think it goes back. It's similar to that kind of conversation about kind of open spaces and the ability to kind of learn or to understand things in a particular way. I suppose maybe I'm too old and too long out of the system and things like that, but I certainly think the way kind of education seems to be moving now, and where it's more kind of project based. It's all about kind of individual learning. It's about student voice and all those kind of pieces. It's around allowing the student to kind of understand themselves and understand their own route through it. So I think that old model of rote learning certainly is maybe slowly kind of on the way out, but it's definitely moving to a place where that individual and them finding their own way through it, I think, is how it's best approached. I think there's different kids, different students all learn in different ways. I mean, on myself, I learn or I get to understand things through working through them. I don't necessarily, I get a bit of a mental block if I sit down and try and just learn something, but it's when I get my hands into it, when I start making, when I start taking things apart and putting them together again. And I think that's so important. And I think that's that's one of the things that these projects with the Big Idea kids get to do. They get their hands kind of into things, and it's a different way of thinking. And I think that's so important, that there are not just one way of doing things. There's different ways that different people can approach things, and it just helps to figure things out. And obviously, different people can just approach it from different angles. So I think that's so important.
Absolutely. And Lorna, if I may come to you.
So I think it's shifting, it's changing, but I would say probably the kind of rote education is essentially it's a little bit like kind of understanding our relationship. When we think about how we teach kids about their bodies and about health, it's also how we children kind of understand their brain as a memory machine. When you kind of grow up to think that your brain is about kind of filling it with memories and then retrieving them, there's this kind of relationship we have with our capacity, our kind of mental, kind of cognitive capacity is really limited. And I think that we don't understand how to teach children, the full capacity of what the brain can do, in the same way as we have a really funny relationship with our bodies, and we don't understand how to teach children how to understand their bodies. And I think a big part of what's happening with kind of particularly adolescent mental health is that there's just not a good enough narrative around understanding identity and understanding emotions and understanding, your responses to things and kind of developmentally. And so I think education and how we learn has just been about putting memories, putting ideas into, and then retrieving them, and not actually having a really intimate relationship with your brain, like not knowing what it's like we're using 10% of it. Yeah. And so I think creativity starts to challenge us to say, what is the other 90% of your brain capable of doing? that we aren't doing. And so I think there's definitely kind of a shift, and it's really progressive. But I think the kind of idea that there's so much more the human brain can do and can perceive and can understand, and in terms of we can think, we can imagine things that are impossible. We can imagine things we've never seen. We have the capacity to experiment in our heads. There's stuff we just haven't tapped into, and I think that we really just need to start thinking about how do you tap into the brain's capacity and understand it as a kind of landscape versus a memory machine. And I think that that I'd love to see that kind of really unpacking it more in education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's there's massive potential there if we can, again, it's almost that horizontal but vertical axis that we can join, reduce the gap between industry and education, move as fast. And I know that's a massive ask, but even reframe or redesign and almost take down those blocks between education and the subject material. There's massive potential there. Ashwin.
Yeah, I don't think we give enough emphasis to good teachers. Let me give you an example. When I was in school, history is one of the driest, most boring subjects on earth. But fortunately for me, Mr. Johnson came in and he dressed up as a pirate when we were learning about pirates, and he made it interactive. He drew us into the narrative and made it real for us. And so the power of a good teacher will shift the perception of the subject, no matter how dry or even if it's the same content, how it is then taught to the other students or how they are involved in it shapes how they perceive the subject, the matter in general. And so I think there has to be an emphasis on giving teachers their due credit and change this perception of those who can't do teach, because teaching is actually a profound skill, and if done well, will shift the career path of a student.
Absolutely.
And then just to add on to that, it's also a question of learning to show students the deeper narrative of why they're learning what they're learning. I find that when they understand the why, a lot more clicks into place. Why does this work this way? And you're kind of like shifting their mindset around the reason behind their learning. And I think if they can see the end goal, then it gives them a path to move towards, versus here is what you need to learn, just memorize this and that's the end of that. Versus if you learn this, this will give you the skills you need to excel at such and such skill or such and such job.
Yeah, you're 100% there, and full credit to some amazing teachers. They have an incredibly important role. And speaking as a parent, I think you really only understand that when your child starts going through the school system, how important they actually are to the country. And to your point as well, Stevens, it's about capturing all those different learning styles. So I myself am a physical learner, so I really excelled in art or anything where I could get my hands dirty, I excelled at. But anything that I had to write or try and learn, that wasn't for me. So we do have to accommodate for all these types of learning abilities, and serious kudos for those teachers that are trying to kind of work towards all those different types of styles of learning. Wonderful. So on to our next question, just checking time. You were all mentors on our big idea in our first year, and we launched in January. Why have you signed up again as a mentor for 2022? Not to put you on the spot. Lorna, we might start with you.
So I guess I would say maybe for all of us, the first time was a bit of a rehearsal. I think that there's an awful lot that I know I felt in hindsight I kind of would have done differently. And I think that's maybe back to, probably the creative process is it's really iterative. And so you don't expect to get it right the first time. But I mean, if you pay attention, you can kind of see, what worked, what didn't work. And, I think to Ashwin's point, some of the kind of key attributes or kind of elements that could be really amplified second time around. So it feels like, I was really eager to kind of get back in And I know, we've been working together as a community of mentors, just kind of, dialoguing ourselves about, how to help you, Kim, make the session better. And so it feels really important to go back in and to kind of refine the model and to kind of, evolve it. That's the whole process. It would be kind of crazy to abandon it, because we're just kind of starting to really understand it and its impact. And I think that it's really important to kind of bring back those learnings and to kind of try it again and really refine it and to broaden it as well. And probably a third time as well, to keep getting it better and better.
Yeah, amazing. Ashwin.
Yeah, I think for us, we are responsible for the next generation. We need to foster the change we want to see. And often that means planting the seeds now so that you can see the growth of the tree 2 or 3, 20 or 30 years later, not 2 or 3 years later, maybe 2 or 3 years later. But that's part of it. And then like mentoring, it's also the process of the relationship between the mentee and the mentor. It's a two-way stream, and you learn so much from how they're thinking. You get insight into their landscape versus our own, and how that shifts our own perception on the industry, on education, on our world in general. And so it's really important to have that perspective.
Amazing. Thanks, Ashwin. Stephen, last but not least.
Yeah, just looking forward to doing more of it. There's, I suppose, a little bit as well of, I think if I think back to my own time in school, I would have just absolutely loved to have something like this in my life. It didn't exist. There was nothing like this at the time. And, I just think if there's kids out there and we can have some kind of impact or help or whatever it might be to them to change their point of view, to open their thinking or perspective up to, do they potentially end up working in these kind of fields, or do they just bring this type of thinking into, wherever they end up in the world? I just think it's absolutely amazing. So I'm just delighted to be part of it. I felt really energized by being part of it. And, I'm really keen as well to just, I suppose, spread the word on it. And I know there's team members I have here in work in the studio, designers, but also people who are coming in from, we have project managers and account directors who, say that there's a lot of conversations that start with, I'm not a designer, but ... and then they go on to have a design discussion. But I'd love for those people as well, that it's not just confined to, people who are directly labeled as designers or whatever, but more people to get involved and to get that energy, but also to give back as well. So yeah, just really looking forward to it.
Great, and we're all thrilled that you've all come back on board this year as well, and we've got some very, very lucky students. So just want to touch on student projects before we go for any Q&A. So was there any student projects that stood out to you, and why from our first year? Lorna, we might start with you again.
I think rather than, I was kind of, generally there was kind of themes that stood out versus projects. There was clearly, we awarded some, I think, ones that we thought had kind of were examples of, all the different attributes that we were looking for in terms of like really great team kind of collaboration and great experimentation and good kind of exploration, and then great kind of resolution and solutions and stuff, and presentations were important. So there was kind of characteristics that we were rewarded for. But I think in general, just like looking at the projects, one thing that was really nice was to see some of the dynamics of the teams themselves. I think it's kind of, I think it breaks down some of maybe the existing kind of, I don't know if there's silos, but what was lovely was even seeing the kind of gender split. So there's something about, just that kind of, there was a kind of an equity, an awful lot of the kind of male female colleagues, kind of working together. That looked really healthy. It was really, and then there was also that sense of like some of the kids who might have been quieter outliers a little bit. I'm this is the nerdy kids, the kids that were maybe really, quieter in the room. They weren't ones that maybe were extroverts. They were drawn into this process. And so I think just the kind of representation, the diversity of the teams, and how inclusive it was. and how much it seemed to kind of bring out, everyone's different and everyone has something to contribute. And I think a big part of what the kind of message is that like a good team is a really diverse team, and it's diverse in lots of different ways. And people who are potentially really quiet in certain kind of environments where they don't have a voice because they're not validated, they don't identify strongly with what the kind of social currency is that's happening in a classroom, they were able to bring, their skills, and it was a kind of a safe place. And so I think rather than that being what stood out, I think just witnessing the team dynamics, and I think the relationship they obviously have with their teachers. I think Ashwin mentioned it, but the teachers were like extraordinary mentors already, and just to kind of witness that was really important. So I think all of the projects, it was really about kind of the team dynamic was probably the thing that struck me the most.
Amazing. And Stephen, if you might go to you next.
Sorry, I blanked out there. I was, sorry, you'll have to repeat the question.
No, you're fine. Your student projects last year, were there any?
Yes, sorry, there was noise going on in the background here. Somebody's decided to make cups of tea. I'm sitting beside the kitchen.
Fine. It's so funny to be back in the office.
I know.
So
yes. Sorry, just in terms of projects, that came from last year. I worked in the health and wellbeing area, and so I suppose in terms of individual projects, it was just that piece where people were able to just interview and speak to either their fellow students and kind of do their research and find out about things that were affecting their peers and others within their group, and I suppose just be able to analyze those things. And there was ideas that were coming around about kind of things that you can do in the morning, about taking time for yourself, about how can you use either technology kind of with you, or some of them were about kind of breaking from technology that they felt was maybe impeding their mental health or the well-being and things like that. And it was just, I suppose it was just looking at the kids, and I just thought it was so interesting that they were critically analyzing these things and actually just speaking to their peers and using research to be able to find out about things that were affecting them in their lives, and just actually then think about solutions for them. So it was just really, really interesting, and a huge breadth of kind of projects that came through. And I loved the energy that came through in some of the videos. And I think, as Lorna was saying there, just the different kids, I suppose, within the groups as well, kind of speaking out, and just a huge range of kind of really interesting pieces. So I wouldn't say one particular project, but just I think just overall kind of what each one was kind of bringing to it, and how they were kind of analysing the problems.
Amazing. Thanks, Stephen. And Ashwin.
So it was really interesting. Over the last 2 years, there's been a huge conversation around diversity and inclusion. And it was great to see the students pick up on these topics and then start asking themselves, what can we do to shape and change the culture around this? And it was great to see that they're not just thinking macro, where like you get industry to change or pitching ideas like that, but small initiatives within their own school or within their area, where they could do little things to shape the conversation around themselves. And the fact that they're even having the conversation was a great opportunity to see how they're thinking about it and how they can solve problems for themselves versus waiting for somebody else to do it. So that was really exciting to me, to see that process and to actually interact with them and give them questions where they can pursue further problem solving within those areas.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And that's it exactly. We are developing mindsets and encouraging young people to kind of think about issues in a very different way and connect them and empower them to kind of make a change themselves. And it's so possible. We have about 1 minute left, so we've time for a very quick question from the audience if we have one. I don't know if anybody wants to stick their hand up. You can put your little hand up in your reactions button in Zoom if you'd like to take the jump. Don't be shy. We don't bite. Oh, there's Annette. Annette, feel free.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It has been very interesting to listen about it, and I get many thoughts all over the place. But I just wanted to ask, in what social kind of areas were the schools included? Was it very different, with also schools with some problems or being in problem areas?
Well, absolutely. I'll take that one. We had 500 students in our first year, and they were from a diverse school group. So we had urban, rural, disadvantaged schools. We had single-sex schools. So it really gave us a chance to understand what would work, or would it work differently in different settings. And we found that it worked actually really well in nearly every setting. And so this year, when we turn to 2022, we'll have 2,000 students in 20 counties across Ireland. We'll have 43% of schools that are disadvantaged. And we'll have one whole class of students on the autistic spectrum as well, which we're really excited about. So we're, again, aiming to be as inclusive as possible, and all of our tasks and our classes are designed for all different styles of learning. And we're keeping in contact with teachers all through the program to find out if maybe a task is too tough for some students. And then we'll work to kind of really quickly to amend those to make sure that everybody can be involved and feel part of the process. So we're really excited to kick off. And we're going to wrap that up because we have hit time. So I'd really like to thank Stephen, Ashwin, and of course Lorna for joining us today, and really delighted to have you as mentors in 2022. If you'd like to find out more about mentoring, I know Niamh has popped a link in the chat. We have 2,000 students looking for 400 mentors, so we're not trying to do anything small, and we'd love to have you involved. So thanks so much for coming today, and keep well. Chat soon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thanks, Kim. Bye. See you guys.
Bye.